Introducing yet another war for Israel, this time featuring America's brand new allies, Al-Qaeda. Yes, those wonderful people who brought you the Big Mac, Mom's Apple Pie, Burger King, and Kentucky Fried People are at it again. And all because Binyamin Netanyahu was able to tell his partner in war crimes just what he needed to hear. The absolutely, without question, no doubt at all, genuine, 100% verifiably true information obtained by the Israeli Mossad, motto, by way of deception, thou shalt do war, that Bashar al Assad was guilty of gassing his own people in a situation where the Syrian leader knew that the United States Navy was poised on his own doorstep to take action if he did anything so stupid as to gas his own people while the United States Navy was poised on his own doorstep. But, according to America's top government officials and military brass, that is exactly what the Syrian leader did, and that is what they are telling Congress and the people of the United States. No question of reasonable doubt here, Assad is guilty. He may not be the world's most lovable leader, but he is far from being stupid, and these people are blatantly ignoring plausible reports that the rebels were responsible for the incident.
Meanwhile, the foreign-backed insurgents in Syria have taken responsibility for last week's chemical attack, which the U.S. and its allies are blaming on the Syrian government. Militants in the Damascus suburb of Ghouta admitted to Dale Gavlak, a freelance AP journalist who broke the story for Mint Press News, that they received the chemical weapons from Saudi Arabia. The insurgents have also said that the casualties were the result of mishandling of the chemical ordnance, which happened because they were not properly trained how to handle such material. A few months ago, shocking footage posted on the internet showed insurgents testing chemical weapons on lab rabbits and making threats to use them against Syrians.
How can these people look their own family members in the eye, particularly their children? But never mind them, it's certainly working on Capitol Hill where it really counts.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank all three of you gentlemen for your service to our country. And I want to thank all of you for sharing the information that you have thus far with Congress and the American public, as well as the world. And I think clearly that anyone looking at this evenly, that has been a success in terms of making clear the case there were chemical weapons used, and the Assad government indeed used them.
I wonder if Representative Keating realizes that his wonderful country has been peppering the Middle East with chemical weapons since the first Gulf War. The name depleted uranium is a massive linguistic deception, because in dust form it causes cancer and birth defects like these, and remains radioactive for millions of years. But just listen to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff rubbishing a rather minor player in the Chemical Warfare League.
They've reached the point now where Assad is using chemical weapons as just another military tool in his arsenal. That runs great risk for Syria. It runs risk in the region. It runs risk in the globe. And I'm able to, with some integrity, with a lot of integrity, I hope, 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 be able to come here before you today and make that distinction that we should do something in our national interest based on the use of chemical weapons.
Get that. With a lot of integrity, he hopes. And to coin a famous phrase,
who are those guys?
Right on. Who are those guys who can lie to the Congress, the American people, and to the rest of the world with such ease? So let's get one thing very clear. This was a congressional hearing about the merits of taking military action against another sovereign nation, which would almost certainly result in the deaths of innocent civilians. But the person being charged with criminal wrongdoing, that nation's president, was virtually being lynched on the say-so of his arch-enemy, Israel's Prime Minister. But there is far more circumstantial evidence pointing the finger at Israel for the 9/11 attacks than there is at the Syrian president for the alleged gas attack he is being accused of, as I pointed out in one of my earlier videos. The so-called 5 dancing Israelis, arrested on 9/11 having been seen dancing, laughing and high-fiving as the towers collapsed, provide yet more evidence that there was pre-knowledge of the attacks.
And at that point we were taken for another round of questioning, this time related to our allegedly being members of Mossad. The fact of the matter is we are coming from a country that experiences terror daily. Our purpose was to document the event. Our purpose was to document the event. To document the event. The event.
The 5 Israelis were detained for 10 weeks and finally deported on immigration violations after the FBI cleared them of any involvement in 9/11.
No congressional hearings needed here. The FBI just let them go. And the 9/11 Commission made no mention of how someone could have known exactly where to point the camera for this video. Several groups of men were seen setting up cameras across the Hudson before the planes hit the towers. Witnesses reported they saw some men jumping for joy in Liberty State Park after the North Tower impact. But one camera crew were less public about it, for they seemed to have found a very discreet camera position in order to document the event, with an excellent landmark to help with plane spotting. Unlike the park foreman shot, this looks like waiting for the event to happen. Without the landmark, the operator has nothing to line up on, so the camera's direction could be way off. The plane pulled out of its dive above the Statue of Liberty, and having the camera pointing over Ellis Island was the ideal place to pick it up and follow it on the last 8,000 feet of its murderous journey. Using Google Street View, I was able to identify the camera position. The wall in the foreground of the video is this wall, and the camera operator stood on this surface, a flat, sloping roof. There doesn't appear to be any easy access, only trapdoors or skylights, so it looks as though it was chosen because it was the right place to get the shot, not because it was casually convenient. And as we shall now see, a lot of other plans had been made by the United States prior to the event.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
Good one, Amy. But seriously, if General Clark was shown that memo a few weeks after September the 20th, 2001, that means that the strategy for taking out a total of 7 countries in 5 years, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan and Iran, must have been established well before September the 11th, 2001. They may be running a bit behind schedule, but can there be any doubt that 9/11 was not perpetrated by 19 Arabs armed with box cutters and not a single big jet pilot's license between the lot of them? And whether or not the US Congress is stupid enough or complicit enough to go along with a preliminary attack on Syria is really beside the point, isn't it? Except, of course, for the poor Syrians. The indisputable fact is that the American people and the rest of the world are dealing with a criminal cabal of immeasurable proportions, and I can't find any picture on the internet to go with that. But I will say one thing: when someone tells you that they are saying something
with a lot of integrity, I hope,
they almost certainly are not.